When the factory closed for the weekend, the family could move around a little more freely.
The little shop, Hans' little shop, that's what we use as a living quarter over the weekend. It was easier to heat, had a little stove, it had a long workbench by the window, and we would sit there, and in order to stay civilized, Ruth would do everybody's nails.
We played games.
Yeah, the boys played chess. And,
we made chessmen out of, the board of course is easy to make, and then since we didn't have any chessmen, we took a black pipe, iron pipe, cut it into little pieces. Those were the pawns, and then the larger pieces, only he and I knew who is who.
Secret Jews moving around the streets of Berlin were running a great risk. Any German citizen could be asked to produce papers, and spot checks were common in wartime. With a little ingenuity, Ismar found a way around this.
In order to have documentation, I had purchased some passports which were in other names, and falsified them myself in the following fashion. I took off the old picture, inserted my picture, duplicated the stamp by taking it off the original documentation with an egg and transferring the stamp onto my picture. This then gave the authenticity to the passport.
Appearance was everything. If you wanted to pass as non-Jewish, it was vital you didn't look like the Nazi idea of a Jew. The anti-Semitic newspaper Der Stürmer published illustrations to help the Germans spot the Jews among them.
The fact that I had blonde hair in those days helped a lot. I looked like everybody else. I did not look like the drawings in the Stürmer. I didn't have corkscrew curls in black that stood out straight from my head. My nose didn't reach the wall. And so I did not fit the picture.
And even I, who had real dark hair, did not look Jewish, according to the stereotype. I, of course, had to be very careful for something entirely different.
Yeah.
If we went to a bath, which was down the street here, a public bath.
On Moritzplatz there was a public bath.
Since we are Jews and we're circumcised, and the Germans generally are not, we had to make sure that nobody would peek through or whatever, because that would give us away. Or if you went to a public urinal or something, you had to be absolutely sure that nobody would look. So, which to us even at that time was funny.
By now, the Gestapo were catching and deporting about 350 Jews a month from Berlin. Sometimes the safest place to be was on the streets. On the 20th of April, 1943, Larry decided no one would suspect him if he joined the crowd celebrating Hitler's birthday.
I grabbed my satchel and I went like this. And I used to say always, that's how high the shit is in Germany, you know, but I said it to myself. And made my arm go up easy, you know. And the more Nazis you saw, the higher you went. Music was playing on loudspeakers. Some of the loudspeakers were Goebbels' voice, which is very distinct voice.
In den nächsten Wochen und Monaten zu großer Offensiven antreten werden.
Geliebte Führer, wir gratulieren dir. You know, he spoke with a elongated tone, very distinct. And it was something like hypnotism. And he was extolling how great our Führer is, how proud he made us, how he led us into victory, because the Germans were beating the daylights out of everyone. It was a picture of happiness all over the country. And you know something? Sometimes I felt, why didn't he let me be part of it? I'm a German too. If you have no legs, you can walk. If you have no ears, like I'm a little deaf now, you can hear. If you're a Jew, you can't be a German. And it hurt. It hurt me very much.
By mid-1943, Allied bombing was devastating Berlin. This was dangerous for all Berliners, but doubly so for Jews in hiding.
We could not go into any bunker. We had to just be in the house. I remember very vividly that I basically prayed for the planes to come and smash Berlin to hell.
I used to look up, and the American fighter planes, left and right, going around the big American fortresses, and the bombs were coming out. And I sat up there, being happy and laughing, knowing the bombs were not meant for me.
When the air raid shelter around the corner suffered a direct hit, Jochen couldn't resist going to see.
I went there after the air raid, and really we didn't know who was in there, to enjoy the sight, if you will. When we came there, it was all children and mothers. And the Germans who already started to try to dig those people out were, I don't know why, but they were stupefied. We got out 7 children. I can't remember whether they were, some of them were really tiny and others were toddlers, I wouldn't know how. 7 children, and the mothers we couldn't get out. All we could hear was their screaming, their moaning, and also children still. There were roughly, if I recall correctly, 200 or something children and mothers. Even though those were German children or German mothers, we could not just stand by.
Blow your nose.
In the summer of 1943, the Gestapo developed a new technique for finding secret Jews. They bribed and threatened Jews who'd already been captured to betray their own people. The Gestapo offered these Jews a choice. They could face death, or they could buy their own survival by working for the Nazis. They would search the streets of Berlin for people they knew or suspected were fellow Jews. The most dangerous of the catchers, or Greifers as they were called, was Stella Kübler. She caught hundreds of Jews in the 2 years she worked for the Gestapo.
And look,
Ellen and Stella had been at art school together. This put Ellen in particular danger.
Yeah. I ran into her in a restaurant. My mother, always, God bless, you would think she was going to go to the bridge club or something, with the hat with the feathers and the furs hanging to the floor, you know. And so my mother was very small. She was even shorter than I am. And fortunately, she was walking in front of me. I was holding the big door. And I look over her hat, and on the end of the room, there is Stella and her fellow catcher, Isaacson. I thought I was going to die. So I thought I was going to really die. So I pulled my mother back, couldn't say a word. My mother just looked at me. I think she must have seen I was terror-stricken, you know. It was her feathery hat. She had this whole chicken on top of her head that saved me because she was so short. And we kept on changing bus to a streetcar to subway for hours because I was afraid she might have seen us and either she or Isaacson would follow us.
So we have to see how that goes.
Whenever I was out, I was constantly aware of the danger lurking outside. I went out maybe once a week and bought food on the black market. I ran into a young girl, woman, very pretty, and I just glanced at her, but we bonded immediately and had an immediate chemistry between us. Erica knew that I was Jewish. She herself was a German Christian young woman who, however, accepted me readily as a Jew, as a human being, and ultimately as her lover.
I can say I had terrible days in the underground. Nobody should have them. But I had sometimes days and nights, they were so beautiful. When you're young and you want to live, you do everything. I was laying there on the beach, white like I had no tan, and I sleep. All of a sudden a ball hits me and a woman wakes me up and said, "Mister, you're gonna burn." We got very friendly. She said, "You know, I promised my husband that I would call him. Why don't you come along?" She told me, he made so many children for Hitler. Says, "Now I'm gonna have a child from somebody else." And the phone booth has milky glass where you see that the phone booth is inhabited. You might not see movements. I didn't know that. But who the hell cared? And while she was talking to her husband, this thing happened. I said to myself, I hope you carry a real Jew in your belly. And that was for me the greatest satisfaction, to give a Nazi a Jewish child.